One afternoon, a boy named Alk was quietly fishing by the lake when a strange old man appeared and asked if he wanted to learn magic. The offer was too good to refuse, so Alk began spending his days training under the man Eldies, a skilled mage. One day, Eldies decided to teach Alk fire magic, the kind used to protect others. It was tricky at first, but Alk eventually got it right. He was a little disappointed it took him all day, but Eldies reminded him that most people need a month to learn what he did in one day, so he should stop pouting and be proud. When Alk begged for another lesson, Eldies said that was enough magic for one day and suggested they relax with some fishing. Alk reluctantly agreed, though he clearly wanted to keep learning. Eldies chuckled and said Alk had amazing talent. Even without a teacher, he'd probably become a great mage. That got Alk thinking. "Then why did you even bother teaching me?" he asked. Eldies smiled, but before he could answer, his fishing line suddenly jerked, and the conversation was over. The next day, training continued. Eldies handed Alk a magic textbook, but to Alk, it was more confusing than math with letters. Over the next few months, though, he slowly began to understand. Then, one spring morning, Eldies came with bad news. He had to leave the capital and could no longer train Alk. Before leaving, Eldies gave Alk one final warning. "You have the talent to become a court magician, but if anyone ever offers you that job, turn it down. It's not worth the trouble." Alk was confused and asked why Eldies had chosen to teach him in the first place. Eldies revealed that Alk's mother once did him a great kindness, and training her son was his way of repaying that debt. Years later, Alk became a student at the Royal Academy. One day, he found an old yearbook and discovered that Eldies had once been the top student and later a court magician, before being banished from the kingdom. That explained everything, except Alk immediately decided he'd become a court magician too, to clear Eldies' name, completely forgetting the old man's warning. Fast forward, guess what? Alk got banished too. He had joined the hero party, led by the Crown Prince Regulus, along with Lenny, a mage, and X, a knight. But during a mission, Regulus suddenly fired him. Alk was stunned. Why? Regulus explained that everyone else had flashy rolls. He swung his sword, Lenny blasted magic, and X blocked attacks. Alk, however, only cast boring support spells like defense and buffing. To the prince, that made him useless. Alk tried to explain that support spells were vital, but Regulus, who hadn't had a smart thought in years, wasn't having it. He told Alk to go home. Ironically, Alk had never even wanted to join the party. The king had ordered him to, and refusing a royal command wasn't an option. Now, the prince who banned commoners from carrying weapons just so no one could outshine him was calling Alk weak. Even after being kicked out, Alk still wanted to help. He wrote down monster patterns and battle strategies for the team and went to deliver them at the castle, only to find out he'd been stripped of his court title. Then Lenny showed up, just to rub salt in the wound. She'd always been jealous of Alk since their academy days. He'd been praised while she wasn't. When Alk politely asked her to deliver a letter to the king, she tore it to pieces right in front of him and told the guards to throw him out. 4 years after becoming a court magician, Alk had tried to fix the corrupt system, but nothing changed. Then one day, he heard a familiar voice, Yora, his old friend. She hugged him tightly, shocked to see him again. Sitting by the canal, Alk told her everything. Furious at how the kingdom treated commoners, Yora ranted until Alk calmed her down. Then she smiled, saying she was glad he'd been kicked out. It meant he was free to join her party. Moved by her faith in him, Alk agreed. The next morning, they set off for Fisizal City. Alk thought about Eldies' old warning, wondering if things would have been easier if he'd listened. Back in the capital, Prince Regulus bragged about finally getting rid of the commoner mage. Lenny cheered, saying they could now replace him with a noble and clear dungeons faster. Spoiler, they're going to regret it. Days later, Alk and Yora arrived in Fisizal, a city where nobles and commoners actually got along. Yora called it a paradise for adventurers and led Alk to the guild to register. That's when trouble started. The receptionist told Alk he needed a special license to explore dungeons past level 30, and that required 2 years of registration. Worse, Yora's teammate Kesha had already angered the guild earlier, so no one wanted to help them. Yora was frustrated their team had already reached floor 52, but now they'd have to wait 2 years. Still, she shrugged it off. No point complaining. We'll just explore where we can. Later that day, they entered a dungeon only to face a swarm of red hornets the size of footballs. Yora boosted Alk with magic, but there were too many. Alk realized something had disturbed their nest. Yora charged ahead, ignoring him. "You've gotten soft, Alk. Remember who you were before you became a court mage?" That fired him up. Alk unleashed his full-strength fire blasts, then a massive thunderbolt, wiping the hornets out. But before they could breathe, the ground shook as a giant earthworm erupted and coiled around Yora. "Your defense magic still as strong as back in the academy?" Alk yelled. "Only if your attack magic's still insane," she shouted back. Trusting her shields, Alk summoned a fire tornado, engulfing both Yora and the monster. When the flames cleared, the worm was ash and Yora stood unharmed, grinning. "Your magic's still incredible," she laughed. "Can't wait to get the team back together, it'll be just like old times." Before graduation, Alk was part of a legendary student team made up of Ornis the warrior, Crazia the archer, Yora the support mage, and Alk himself the attack mage. On their final day at the academy, they shattered the dungeon record by clearing the 68th floor and secured top ranks. As they walked home, Alk suddenly dropped a bombshell: he wasn't joining their adventuring party. Instead, he planned to become a court magician. His friends were disappointed, especially Ornis, since together they could have formed the strongest adventuring team ever. But they respected his choice. Before parting ways, Yora made it clear she wouldn't give up on recruiting him in the future. Fast forward to the present. Yora officially welcomes Alk to her party. To celebrate, she treats him to a feast, and then promptly gets drunk after a single mug of beer. While she's slumped over, Alk gently uses magic to cover her with his jacket. Just then, a stranger appears behind him, mocking how considerate Alk is for an adventurer. Alk ignores him, but that only ticks the man off, and he smashes a bottle at Alk. Luckily, Alk blocks it with a magic shield. Before he can retaliate, the man calls him by name and slides a dungeon pass across the table, calling it an apology for testing him. Alk is confused until Yora groggily wakes up and blurts out that the man is actually the guildmaster. The guildmaster, Leviel Stans, invites Alk to a sparring match at the training center. Turns out, Leviel is a former S-rank adventurer, so Alk knows this won't be easy, but it's the perfect chance to sharpen his skills. As the fight begins, Alk fires off a thunderbolt, but Leviel dodges and counters with a water slash. Realizing long range won't cut it, Alk charges in. Leviel buffs himself with enhancement magic, turning into a blur of speed and power. Alk barely blocks his first punch with a shield and gets launched into a wall. But instead of giving up, Alk laughs. As a court mage, he was forced to only support and dodge. As an adventurer, he can finally go all out. He transforms his wand into a magic sword, slashes through Leviel's water attacks, and counters his dash with a thunderbolt. Leviel is impressed but isn't done yet. He activates an ancient artifact, massive gauntlets that can crater the floor with one punch. Alk knows one hit could end him, so he strikes back fast. Unfortunately, Leviel's artifact also heals him over time, meaning the longer the fight drags on, the worse it gets for Alk. Alk taunts him into attacking recklessly, leaving Leviel wide open for a clean slash. The fight intensifies, shields shatter, the ground cracks, and finally, with one last move, Alk lands a decisive blow. He collapses immediately after, completely spent. Leviel admits he may have gone a little overboard and declares Alk the winner. Ornis arrives just in time to see the aftermath and teases Leviel for using his ultimate weapon in a friendly match. Leviel just shrugs it was fun. He hands Alk the dungeon pass and promises full support as long as Alk doesn't sue him. As Alk rests on the couch, Yora and Ornis talk about his rough past. At the royal castle, commoners like Alk faced endless snobbery and unfair treatment. Surviving there as a court mage was a battle of its own. Suddenly, the receptionist rushes in with bad news, and Leviel leaves to handle it, strictly warning them not to touch his expensive alcohol. Naturally, Ornis immediately grabs the fanciest bottle he can find, just to mess with him later. Then he turns to Yora and says, "All right, spill it. I want the full story of Alk the court mage." And oh boy, she's got plenty to tell. Back when Alk worked at the royal castle, life was miserable. His job was to protect the prince, but here's the catch: he wasn't allowed to carry a sword or use any magic that might make him look stronger than the royal brat. On top of that, he had to carry the team's luggage and manage their gear. And to add insult to injury, after forcing Alk to only use support magic, the prince had the nerve to call him useless for doing exactly that. Ornis is baffled because Alk is an attack mage, not a healer. So Yora explains that Alk spent years learning support magic just to keep the prince happy, even though it wasn't his thing. Hearing everything Alk went through, Ornis is ready to march to the kingdom and punch that prince square in the face. But Alk stops him. He admits the past still stings, but he's not the kind of guy to waste energy on revenge. He'd rather spend his time adventuring with his friends. Besides, karma will deal with the prince eventually after all. There's no one left to clean up his royal mess anymore. That gives Ornis an idea. If they become the strongest adventurers in the world, the prince will regret ever kicking Alk out. One day, when the prince comes crawling back, Alk can reject him with the most satisfying no ever. Alk likes the sound of that. The two fist bump, swearing to rise to the top together. Meanwhile, in another room, a badly injured member of an S-rank party is being patched up. She reports to the guildmaster that their mission was a total disaster. The rest of her team is still trapped on the 64th floor of the dungeon. The guildmaster, Leviel, calls for an emergency rescue team, but the only people available on such short notice are the ones already at the guild. Everyone looks uneasy. They know how dangerous that floor is. While the meeting happens, Alk sits alone in Leviel's office, bruised and bandaged from his spar earlier. Krezia finds him and heals him with restoration magic. She reminds him he's not an outsider anymore, he belongs here. Years of keeping his head down at the castle made him quiet, but breaking that habit won't happen overnight. She gently pats his head, and for the first time in a while, Alk actually feels safe. A moment later, Ornis and Yora return, grinning like troublemakers. Ornis announces they've got their first big mission, the dungeon nicknamed Tank Killer. Why the name? Because inside, healing magic doesn't work, only potions can keep you alive. Krezia clearly hates this plan since healing is her specialty, but Ornis pressured her into it anyway. Alk worries he won't be much help, but Yora cuts him off with a grin. "Are you kidding? You're the backbone of this team. Without your magic, we can't even start." And just like that, Team Alk is heading into their first dangerous mission together. End of episode 2. The team's goal is simple: reach the rescue party trapped on floor 64. The problem: getting there the normal way would take forever, and they don't have that kind of time. Luckily, the guild master gave them a little cheat code, a dungeon core. This handy item lets them skip past all the previous boss fights up to the floor it was found on. Since Krista brought this one back from floor 64, it means smooth sailing, well, mostly. The floor boss is said to be an undead monster, so everyone's counting on Alk's attack magic to deal the final blow. That's why Ornis tells him to save his energy until the big fight. Alk's unsure about sitting out of most of the action, but Ornis insists it's better than him running out of magic mid-battle. They teleport to the 64th floor, and right away, a pack of skeletons welcomes them. Ornis, never one to waste time, charges forward and starts spearing bones left and right. Yora yells for him to slow down so she can cast defensive magic on him, but honestly, he's doing fine without it. Alk and Kra trail behind, chatting. Alk's surprised to learn Ornis owns a weapon like Levio's. Kra explains it's basically just a spear with sharpness and unbreaking enchantments. Nothing fancy, but perfect for a guy like Ornis. Things are getting dull since Ornis is single-handedly wrecking everything, so Alk offers to help. Ornis shuts him down, saying he wants to handle all the fodder himself. As they continue walking, Alk suddenly senses something creeping up on him. He spins around and fires a lightning bolt, boom, right on target. Turns out, it's a Grim Reaper, invisible until Alk struck it. Ornis cheers, proud that Alk's instincts are still razor sharp. But Alk quickly catches on Ornis' new invisible monsters were on this floor and didn't say a word. Ornis admits it. claiming he wanted Alk to figure it out himself for confidence building. Alk isn't exactly thrilled about being turned into a teaching experiment, and the others apologize for going along with it. Crazia even tells Alk to take his anger out on Ornis later. Alk agrees after the mission. They push deeper into the dungeon and stumble upon an even bigger skeleton horde. Ornis gets all hyped up, ready for a decent challenge, but Yora reminds him this is a rescue mission, not a tournament. Of course, he ignores her. Alk joins him, and Yora casts enhancement magic on both. While the two mow down enemies like it's nothing, they forget that Yora can't fight and she's instantly surrounded. Thankfully, Kraus swoops in to save her. Alk decides enough is enough. He tells everyone to get behind him and unleashes a massive thunderbolt that wipes the floor clean. Once the coast is clear, Ornis finally asks why Alk keeps spamming the same spell. Back in school, Alk used to mix it up with all sorts of cool magic. Alk explains that constantly cleaning up after reckless people read, a certain prince made him rely on lightning bolts. They're quick, simple, and effective. Suddenly, a terrifying roar echoes through the dungeon, the floor boss. Yora confirms it, and they rush ahead. With Yora's speed boosts, Ornis takes the lead, sprinting like a blur. When the others catch up, they find him casually sitting at a cliff's edge, watching a guy below being chased by the boss. The poor guy's name is Loki, the support mage of the rescue party, and apparently, everyone hates him. Ornis calls him annoying, and Loki yells that if he dies, he'll haunt Ornis forever. Ornis seems fine with that. Then Loki trips, and Alk freaks out, wanting to help, but the others tell him to relax, this is just Loki's fighting style. Sure enough, the boss steps on one of Loki's traps, and a huge fire pillar blasts it from below. Loki laughs like a maniac as more traps go off, but then runs out. Now he's out of tricks and seconds away from becoming Monster Chow. That's when the team jumps in. Ornis drags Loki to safety while the others distract the boss. The monster charges straight for Loki, furious at being tricked. Ornis can't outrun it, so he pulls off an epic move running under the monster and yeeting Loki across the battlefield to Crazia, who catches him. Yora tells Crazia to get Loki to high ground while she powers up Ornis with every buff spell she's got. Fully charged, Ornis charges head-on. He dodges a huge strike, leaps, and drives his spear right under the monster's eye, but it's not enough. The beast smacks him down hard. Yora rushes to his side and throws up a magic shield just in time to block the monster's stomp. But the shield's already cracking, it won't last long. Yora shouts for Alk to hurry up with his spell before her shield gives out. Up on the clifftop, Loki finally stops panicking long enough to notice what's happening below, and what he sees blows his mind. Alk, the legendary genius mage he's heard so many rumors about, is actually here in the flesh. Loki leans forward, watching closely as Alk calmly starts forming magic circles, lots of them. 3 to 5 at once would already make someone a prodigy. But Alk, he's casually spinning out 20 like it's nothing. Loki's jaw drops. Sensing danger, the undead monster charges toward Alk to interrupt his spell, but Ornis steps in, blocking its path. The moment Alk finishes casting, the air explodes with power as he rains down a storm of lightning bolts one after another before unleashing a massive, concentrated blast meant to finish the beast once and for all. Unfortunately, the monster leaps aside at the last second, dodging the hit. Alk quickly warns everyone to brace for a counterattack. Ornis calls to Kreia for cover fire, and she immediately fires off an arrow rain, pelting the monster and slowing it down. That gives Yora enough time to trap it with binding magic, leaving it wide open. Ornis seizes the moment and hurls his spear straight through the monster's skull bullseye. But somehow, the undead refuses to stay dead. It roars and launches one last desperate attack right at Alk. Bad move. Alk smirks and activates his ultimate trump card, Reflection Magic. It's a spell so advanced that only he's ever pulled it off. The monster's own blast bounces back with full force, exploding in a blinding flash. When the dust settles, Ornis jumps in to finish the job, splitting the creature's head clean in two. Once the smoke clears, Loki finally climbs down and congratulates everyone. He's especially impressed by Alk, saying he's heard all about his legendary feats like the time he took down a Hydra with a single spell. Alk humbly thanks him but admits he's no longer a court mage. Loki is stunned. "What kind of idiots fire you?" he blurts out. Then Loki drops a bombshell. There's another floor boss still roaming around. Everyone freezes. Loki explains that when his team got here, 2 bosses appeared at once. He volunteered to lure away the dumb ones so the others could focus on the tougher opponent, a black armored knight that's probably a possessed suit of armor. Physical attacks won't do much, so their best hope is Alk's magic. Loki tosses Alk a strange cross-shaped artifact called Shwar, saying he can keep it, but there's a catch. Kreia instantly gets suspicious because, let's be real, Loki never gives out freebies. Loki assures them it's nothing big. He just wants Alk to fight the second boss without using any magic. Everyone stares at him like he's lost his mind. "You expect a mage to fight without magic?" Ornis asks. Loki just grins and says, "Exactly. The Death Knight will be expecting magic. So, we'll hit it with the one thing it won't see coming." Subscribe, because things are about to get way crazier in the next one.